Hello all. How we doing? Gonna admit a few more folks and then we'll get right to it. One more. Okay. All right. Just to start off, let's clarify. Things are crazy these days, or reiterate, I guess is the better word. So there's a lot of information going around, and just a lot of stress hormones in all of our bodies. So forgive me for treating you like kindergarten, but to repeat, uh, I'd love for all of you to take another look after today's class at your mix, and I'll be sending you mix notes of some thoughts I had listening to your mix from a new set of ears. And I'd love you to revisit it. And even if it's just boost the final gain or something simple like that, you have until next Tuesday, Monday night, so that we can really master in earnest next week to submit a new final mix based on A, listening to each other's mixes, which we'll talk about today. B, listening to like professional mixes that your song reminds you of. And C, did I go A, B, C, or one, two, three? Either way. The third thing is using the mixing notes that I'm going to send you to adjust a couple of things. Because as Dara talked about yesterday, it's like one of the 10 commandments of mixing: give your ears a break. Your ears, probably a lot of you did a lot of work right up until the end, and your ears were just smashed by the time you turned your mix in. So having a couple days off and listening to other people's mixes probably refreshed your ears. Cool. Any questions on that or thoughts? Okay, great. So what I'd like to do is start a discussion. I'd love to hear from everyone. I asked you to listen to other people's mixes, preferably all of them. I'd like to take today to have people ask each other about their mix and say like, hey, so-and-so, I really liked this part of your mix, or hey, so-and-so, how did you get this certain sound? We're missing Mason and Eden, it looks like. But basically anyone else, if someone has a thought, a question, a comment, a criticism, it can also be like that. Like when you take an art class, someone puts their art piece up and then people can kind of make comments on it. So go ahead, jump in if anyone has any thoughts.
Hey, so who did the Freedom Road mix? I can't remember.
That was Jesse Malloy.
I actually really liked your reverb on it, Jesse. That was it reminded me of, there was this like acoustic album I was listening to on Spotify. Who was it? Oh, my brain is not loading. I will try and remember. But anyways, I was listening to this album and I was like, it was like a couple of weeks ago, and I heard Freedom Road. And my brain immediately went back to that album, and I was like, "That's so cool!" Like, I really like the way that you really filled in the ambiance of the entire track.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, Jesse,
thank
go
you.
ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was kind of like I don't know, it's really difficult to find like a right balance of reverb, because like too much and it just sounds like you're in the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and then too little and it doesn't really have the effect you want.
So could you speak a little bit more directly, like what did you end up doing? And in fact, if possible, it's not required. You can share your screen if you have the session on the computer you're using and show us what the reverb was. You don't have to
Yeah.
play it, but just show us the settings. You're now
Yeah,
allowed to share.
yeah, I'm actually on my phone, so I won't be able to do that. But
No worries.
I used the what was it? I think the one that you demonstrated in class was the Reverb 8. Yeah,
Reverb
and then
8,
I used the other one, and I just turned the what was it? I can't remember. I think it was the gain. I turned it down to like minus like 20 dB almost, because like if you just leave it normal, it sounds really weird. But turning it down will give you a more desirable effect.
That's great. Okay, and then did you play with here? Let me try and get that plugin up. So you just use the reverb, because there's reverb and reverb 8.
Yeah, here, let me try and pull up the session on my laptop here so I can actually like.
You're okay. I'm looking at it now. So yeah, you pulled down the wet. Yeah, that's right. There's not as many. Here, I'll share and kind of show what we're looking at. If I have it here pulled up just on the mastering session, so you're saying here on the wet gain is what you pulled down really far?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. And because you only have with pan and pre reverb, which is a whole different thing. It's kind of an interesting plugin. There's less parameters to play with, but you like the sound of it better.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. It had like it was like echo generator and like and like other stuff that it had, and it gave a really nice effect. Like I really liked the sound that it had.
Oh yeah, that's right. I haven't used this in a while. I see. So you add something in the impulse response generation. So you add echo generation, and then you can
Yeah,
kind
it
of
was
play
like
with. Oh, this
yeah.
is cool.
Let me see what I had here. Let me
This
go
is a
on.
fun toy. Yeah, I see. So this is actually far more complicated. Yeah, let
Yeah,
me know, and I'll stop sharing when you're ready to share. That is cool.
yeah, it's reverb generator and echo generator, and then I put the wet to -27.
Oh, that is neat. Hey, that's cool. I like that. And then what did you add it to? Did you specifically add it to the master the master fader, or did you do it on specific tracks or buses?
I did it pretty much on every track individually.
Okay.
Because so some of them are a little higher than others, and I just like kind of liked that sound that it gave. I thought it was like a little more dynamic.
See, I love that. So that's a total blind spot for me. I've just realized with you saying that. When I think I'm a more traditionalist, small c conservative when it comes to meaning the trait, not the political movement. I think when I'm realizing now with you saying that, Jesse, that when I use reverb, I'm thinking about it as trying to put the whole session in one space to try and make it sound as natural as possible. Now, that's not better necessarily, because one of the coolest things about the revolution of electronic music, meaning just using electronics and plugins and software to produce and create music, is people thinking about these tools in non-traditional ways. So I would never in a million years, until you just said it, ever think of putting reverb on individual tracks, because I would think in my head, logically, not even aesthetically, oh, I don't want to do that because I want everyone to sound like they were in the same room. I'm trying to I'm trying to create a magic trick, right? An oral illusion, if you will, of having everyone be in the same room. But if you just use reverb as a tool, and like you said, it's more dynamic if you put everyone in different locations, like spaces. And when I think about a lot of popular music, I think that's a lot of what we hear is people using reverb in a way that transcends its intended use, which is just to add a little bit of atmosphere. When you first started recording in the 1950s and 60s, you have all these types of ways of generating. Fabricating is a better word, because you're falsifying reverb, like because people were doing sessions in rooms that didn't reverberate much. And so they had all these ways to add fake reverb. And now this natural like digitization of it, you can just use it as this cool ambience generator. So I'm just kind of talking through an epiphany I just had with you saying that, Jesse. That's very cool.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. I think it was cool because I originally did that, like what you were saying, and just kind of like put it on everything. But I decided to just kind of play around with it because I wanted like the solo guitar to have like a little bit more, and kind of like wanted each track to kind of sound like it was coming from like a different place, like spatially.
That's awesome. Really cool. And I agree with Sam wholeheartedly. I thought it's a really wonderful use of reverb, and the space of your track is really warm. It's just a real great track to listen to. I thought you did a good job. Are you proud of it?
Yeah, honestly, I think it turned out pretty well. I mean, because my last like few mixes were I was not proud of, but this one I actually, I thought it turned out. So
you got a few out of your system. That's awesome. Thanks, Jesse. Thanks, Sam. Any other thoughts from anyone about this or other things?
I'm pretty sure it was Joseph's mix, but um I could be wrong on whose mix it was, but the vocals on that mix were fascinating. It's not what I expected. It reminded me of any sort of like Radiohead album.
Do you mean the one with like the kind of drum and bass drums and the electric bass and the muted trumpet?
Possibly.
Trying to
I
think
can't
who else
remember.
had vocals.
I don't know whose vocals it was, but it sounded like Katie Collister's vocals, if that
Oh,
helps.
no, it was Orla. I think here, let me just do this real quick. See if this is what you're talking about. I'll go over Zoom. Is it this? Oops. Darn it. What's happening? Going through Zoom. Huh. Oh, let me try this. No. Check computer sound. All right.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the one. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
definitely
yeah, yeah.
Joseph's. Okay, so what was it about the vocals that was unexpected?
It was just the reverb. It felt like it was at a an underground bar. Is the vibe I would give, and it was fascinating. It's just not what I expected because of the intro. I really, really, really liked it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, Joseph, you want to talk about what you did with those vocals? How you thought about it? Sam Lai agrees that it was really cool.
Oh,
Well, okay.
sorry, I was muted. Sorry.
You're right.
When I listened to the vocals at first, I didn't like. I don't know. It was there was this room sound going on, and I tried everything to get rid of that sound, and I couldn't. So I decided to make the sound less acoustic and more electric, electronic stuff. So I decided, make something where that surrounding sound blends in. I just decided to, go with the reverb. So what I did was, instead of using just reverb, there's this one up there in the JS called what's it called again? Let's see. So yeah. So if you I'm on my phone, not my computer.
Okay,
That's,
here. I'll share so we can kind of look at the plugin together.
Okay.
Go ahead. So it's JS.
Yeah, so there were two parts. I cut two parts. There was the one where she had like the leading vocals. So there I used the JS delay with chorus.
Ooh,
I don't know
that's
if you
a
see
fun
that one.
Yeah.
So, and then the
Ooh,
background,
this one
I
can
used
get
delay with lo-fi.
lo-fi, JS lo-fi. Oh, delay lo-fi.
Yes, delay
Ooh,
with
I've never
lo-fi.
used that.
Yeah, that was pretty good. So I messed with a bunch of them, and then I used
Ooh,
reverb,
fun.
and yeah. But then the stuff was, there was a point where the echo was too much. The delay was too much. I had to cut it off. So when you see the delay there, I pretty much went down to nothing, almost nothing,
Like there,
and it
on
sounded
the
pretty good. Yeah.
milliseconds. Yeah,
It sounded pretty good. Like everything, the feedback and everything was good, the stuff. But I didn't want to, I feel like the delay was too much, there was like the whole sharing with time and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. You're right. This delay, I've used this delay before. It gets intense fast. I'll kind of play with it.
Yeah,
on
you have
top
to.
of yours.
Yeah, that's that.
Yeah, I'm actually on the wrong track. I just realized. But here, let me do it real quick, just so you can kind of see it. Let me see. There we go. Delay with chorus. Oops, am I doing the wrong thing? Oh.
It's so messy. Yeah.
Like I stopped the track like 10 seconds ago.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. So that's like a third of the way up. So yeah, this is something to be used unless you want to like go nuts and do some experimental stuff like 40. Right. Like a little goes a long way.
Yeah. So,
I
but what I noticed was after I did it with this guy, when I went to reverb, I could cut off some stuff. Sorry, no, actually, I went to compression, not reverb. I went to compression,
Oh,
and
I see.
I could cut off a bunch of stuff I didn't want because there was, like there were a bunch of stuffs there where I was like, okay, instead of having to mess with this stuff directly on the delay and the chorus plugin, let me just bring it down here.
So when you said
And
cut off stuff, do you mean with these filters or
yes,
with
those
the
filters,
okay.
yeah, and also I'm bringing down the threshold too.
Yeah.
I changed
I'll turn down so we can
stuff.
hear you. Keep going.
Yeah, because those delays are certain frequency. When you cut off some of those frequencies, you don't hear the rest of it.
Yes, that's true because on the delay you can EQ it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was something. But still, I mean, it's it was mainly for me to get rid of that white noise, that noise. I tried different ways and it wasn't going anywhere. And the noise is still there, but you don't notice it because of so much effects going on.
Yeah. So Joseph's right. Mason had the same problem because it's Orla and she must have some ambient noise in her apartment or wherever she lives because Mason had background vocals from her as well. And there's just this hum that's like, it's at an annoying place. I think we found it. It's like 200 hertz. It's like right in the middle. If it was a hiss, it's easy to do a high shelf. Not easy because you don't want to cut off too many overtones, but you can isolate it because things don't generally have fundamental pitches up there. But it's right in the middle of where fundamental pitches are. And so you and Mason both had the same issue of trying to delete this or mask it. And so what you did a really good job. Like imagine, you have a painting and one of the colors is too bright. You're like, I shouldn't have used that yellow. It's like you just took a dry brush and you just added like, okay, now it's foggy. Like by adding all these effects, you kind of blend the whole thing back. So you're totally right. That was a smart move, Joseph. You can't hear the hum in the final mix. It's just washed out. So that was like a creative solution to an annoying problem. Because you'll get that as producers. You'll get something recording back, be like, oh man, there's a hum. I also want to circle back to something you did, which is really cool. You differentiated her main vocal line with like the kind of more rhythmic thing, and you did different effects to both of them. So it seems like you probably separated them into different tracks so you can affect them differently. Can you talk about the decision that went into that?
Yeah, I mean, it was more like the time. Like I felt like there was this, like it was like I could feel the delineation of form, even though she probably didn't intend to have one, but there was something there that felt like this was this B section or this kind of section, and there was a trumpet solo. I wanted to go there, so I brought down the volume, and and I added some effects to make it sound like it was actually a background vocal, and you could see the distinction, like, oh, she went down here and then it goes up there. And I mean that made it sound it gave it form, and it was like I didn't want it to be just one straight line, like just because if everything sounded the same, it'd just be that way, like all true, and it wouldn't. That was something I just
similar to what Jesse talked about, dynamic. I literally can't say the word dynamicism.
Yeah, that's a hard word to say.
Dynamicism. I have a speech impediment with just that word, but it adds this dynamic quality to the track, and it really does. It ducks, and I like how you use lo-fi to kind of distort her background vocals, and then it comes in. When it comes in again, it's that much brighter, and it's almost like you feel it peripherally. Like I wonder if Brendan can speak to that. If you noticed that the two different vocal lines had different colors on them, or if you just kind of liked the vocal sound at all. Like I wonder what that experience was like.
Yeah, I noticed it. I didn't really give it much thought. I just thought this probably doesn't make any coherent sense, but I just thought it was like part of the song. Like that was the intention that I was going for. Because I was on a drive while I was listening to all this, so I didn't really think about it too much. I just know that I really, really enjoyed that part.
I think
seeing them as like two separate things.
No, that's great. I think that's the perfect response that you want as a mixing as a producer is you don't want people to be like, oh, that was a cool thing. I mean, we're all in a mixing class, so we have an analytical hat on, but just kind of experiencing this stuff naturally. That's awesome. Great. That's a good point, Brendan, that, you want to mix stuff as if that was the original intention of the composer. That's very cool. Any other thoughts on this mix, or that something that sparks? Go ahead. Anyone else with some thoughts?
For me, one of the first ones I listened to was Ryan's mix on Gabe's piece, and it was kind of funny because like I got to like the first like 5 seconds with like his burping and everything. I was like, wait, I need some headphones because I was just listening to it on my computer, and I was like, wait, wait, I need to put on headphones for this, and it was just there was so many things that went into that, and it was all just really clean. I was just sitting there and like, wow, it's really everything's really clear. Everything that's there, you can hear it, but it's not nothing's overdone. And so I thought it was really awesome. I was just sitting there, I was like, wow.
That's great. I completely agree. Yeah, Ryan, it was a fantastic mix, and even it was very well built. Everything belongs in a place, and there's so many wacky sounds that come in and out. It felt like Ryan, you really spent a lot of time building the scaffolding of that mix. You want to talk about it, Ryan?
Yeah, thanks both of you. I don't know. It was fun. It was cool to work on. Gabe has a lot of neat ideas for stuff like that. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's anything specific I would talk about except that I'm probably gonna keep messing with reverb on the vocal because I was never really fully happy with that. Um, but nothing specific.
I'll prompt you a couple times, but just to speak to that, I mean, you had a different, if correct me if I'm wrong, you had a different approach to his vocals where you wanted them to sound more natural than Joseph. Joseph wanted to
Yeah.
play with the vocals and create an effect that was interesting, but you want essentially to create something transparent. So when people listen to it, they don't think, oh, cool reverb. They just think it sounds natural.
Right, yeah, and I felt like the reverb I got was really unnatural. It sounded really digital. And I've kind of been messing with that and finding some better stuff. I really wanted to ask Mason today actually about what he used and how he used it because I thought Mason did a really good job with his vocal reverb.
Yeah, I agree. I think Mason's a great. Unfortunately, he can't be here today, but maybe maybe I'll ask him if he can maybe talk to that a little bit. Oh, we can ask him on Tuesday as well.
Cool.
But yeah, and
Yeah, something he said. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Jason.
Oh no, because about Mason, I had the same question last time about the vocals, and he spoke about balance, and that's something about the human ear is, when you listen live, I think naturally your ear adapts, or take like I don't know how it works though. It's like when you have headphones on, it's different than when you listen live. It's like there's a certain. It's like like what he said was he found a way to like balance it up, and it sounded like you were right in the room or close to that as possible. I think that was something he said that was like, wow, okay. Because I mean, I was looking at effects and stuff, and he spoke about panning, and it's like, huh? Because I mean, I think that changes a lot of stuff. Like if your ear has a defect on one side and one side is good, that affects how you hear naturally. And when you listen on headphones, and if the ear with a defect gets the high sound, and the one that doesn't have that defect is hearing the lower sound, like that affects what you listen to. Like you're not getting, your ear isn't taking as much as you can, or if you know what I mean. So I think panning goes a long way, according to what Mason said on Tuesday. which
Yeah,
is
I think one giant takeaway from all of this for everyone, regardless of your experience going into this mix, is how everything is so interconnected. It's everything is holistic. It's like you change the panning and the reverb is different. And also, Ryan, I want to ask you specifically, what was your order of effects? What was the effects chain? Was reverb early, middle, or
Um,
late?
so I processed my reverb like parallel so that it wouldn't be affected by like compression and stuff like that. So I've got like a vocal reverb bus and a vocal delay bus. Um,
So yeah, you're sidechain. You're sending the vocals to these buses.
yeah. So does that answer your question? So it's kind of out of the
Yeah,
chain. It's
totally. I'm with
separate
you.
from the rest of the chain.
But then everything else was on the track itself.
Yeah. So I bust the main vocals into one bus, and all I have on that is compression, and then um, reverb on another with EQ. Because I don't. So what I was saying about reverb was more about like the tone of it. The tone of Mason's reverb was really warm, and I felt like mine was more like bright and kind of like um, I don't know, just distracting and digital. So
Yeah, I'd be interested. And I work with Mason on his mix, but I don't remember exactly. But he definitely put his effects on the track itself. He might have bussed his vocals, but he might have just done it right on the vocal bus itself. And the other things that are interesting about his is he ended with EQ. And this might not be exactly your question, but some ways you can warm up your effects by adding EQ. So even if you're sending the vocals to a reverb bus, see what happens if you put an EQ after the
yeah,
reverb and
yeah, I
kind of
actually did
shape
that,
it.
and it
You
still
did do that.
wasn't. Yeah, still
And
wasn't doing it for me.
and to go back to something Mason said yesterday, where he said he moved, I forgot what it was. I think the bass 5 clicks, percent over to the right on panning, and there was this whole opening up, like everything kind of opened up. So it's like small experiments really do yield giant results with that kind of stuff. But yeah, I wonder. I'll listen again to yours and his, and then I'll see if we can get maybe him to even screen share what his shape was. The other thing he did, now that I remember, is I'm 80% sure. Sorry, Mason's like watching this later tonight, and we've like spent
Yeah.
a lot of the class just talking about him. He's like, I didn't do any of that, Armstrong. But I think he used some tape simulation, and I wonder if he did that on the vocals. I can't remember. And also, he had
Okay.
background vocals to play with as well, and he
Mhm.
used the background vocals, both Orla and him singing down an octave, as ways to kind of like hug the main vocals. And
Huh.
sometimes that
Okay.
gives the effect of warmth. Like if you listen to like almost any pop song, there's layered vocals happening that you're not even conscious of unless you start thinking about it. And a lot of times those layered vocals aren't some sweet harmony. It's just to warm up the vocals, the main vocal line.
Okay. Cool.
And I think you only had the one vocal track to work with aside from the burps and stuff.
Yeah, it was split across two, but yeah,
What do you mean it was split
Um,
across two?
like he had two different takes of it. So, but yeah, it was just like one line, but split between two tracks depending on where it was in the song.
Oh, but it's not layered. It's one or the other.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes that helps too, is like you just didn't have a lot of support.
Right. Right.
Well, what about the panning? Because his song was like almost vaudeville. So he had all these sounds
Yeah.
coming in and coming out. How did you think about those? And was each one on a different track, or was there like a goofy track with everything on it?
Yeah, he had 3 ad lib tracks with like funny names to them all. But yeah, that was something that he like. That was one of the only things he mentioned up front was like, please do some silly panning with the silly ad lib stuff. So like, I don't know, just finding ways for things to like move across and not be like over the top, but still kind of add that goofiness that I think he wanted.
Yeah, it's definitely a vivacious mix, and it doesn't, like you say, over the top. It never takes away from the song, but the song is so vivacious too that I think you really,
Right.
going back to day one, you took the thing that was strong about the track anyways, and you accentuated it. Yeah, outstanding mix. Really nice job, Ryan.
Thanks.
Other thoughts from folks about Ryan's mix or any other song that you thought was cool?
I had a general overarching idea that I got out of all of this, and it's not really correlated to anyone's mix specifically. Um, Actually, I take that back, like at all. It's just a general mixing thing I got out of listening to everybody's mix. Is the quality of the recording directly affects the quality or how much time or like what resources you're going to put your time into in the mix itself. Like, so the way that things are recorded are totally going to affect like how you view the song. You might spend the whole time trying to get rid of the stuff that you don't like in the way that they recorded it. I don't know why I got that out of all of this listening, but
No, it's such a good point. That my first teacher of this stuff is basically crap in, crap out. Like if you have a bad recording and you're the mixing engineer, there's basically nothing you can do. Best case scenario, like, and it wasn't a terrible recording because she did such a good job. But with Joseph, like taking something with like bad audio quality or less suboptimal audio quality, you have to then lean into it judo style and find a way to mask it or do something else with it that's creative. But you're totally right, Brandon, is the better quality, especially the musical performances, the easier it is to mix, and the better quality the actual sound was, the easier it is to mix. It's a great point. Because to put a finer point on it, you're saying like what time you're spending as an engineer. If you have really good sounds coming in, then you just get to have fun and shape things and make decisions, and it's a real joy. It can be frustrating, but
exactly.
if you're battling some kind of inherent issue, it's just a drag, and you spend a lot of time on it. That's a really good point and something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I was gonna say when you said spend time on stuff, it's like when you look at the time and see how much time you spent and how awful what you done sounds, and you're still like, God, can it get better than this?
Yeah,
It's I don't know.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just better to ask someone to re-record it if it really is that poor. And something that Mason and I talked about because in our lessons that I think is good for everyone, especially those that recorded things themselves. It's really worth it to take the extra time on the front end of pre-production. And that can happen in a couple ways. One, it can happen with just spending the time to rehearse the part that you're recording in. Generally speaking, if you just sort of like play a part into a track, I'll actually use my own experience. So I played bass on Jesse's track. And the first thing I did was listen to it, I don't know, 8 times, and just listen to it until bass lines kind of naturally came to my head. I had no bass in my hands, no keyboard, just listening to it. And I kind of was like setting up my recording gear and just listening to it and singing bass lines. And then I went on paper and I wrote out the form. This is how many bars this is how many bars this is when Dara comes in, so on and so forth. And I kind of drew my arc out. So before I ever touched my bass, I spent all that time just pre-producing. Then I spent a long time just making sure my bass sound was really good and getting all my levels right. And then when I was ready to record, I did 3 or 4 takes, and I might have even combined a couple, I can't remember, until it was like exactly what I wanted. And I would listen back and be like, I kind of hitched on that one rhythm. Let me redo it. Or, ooh, that wasn't right. I went to that high melody a little too early. Let me redo it. Now, I probably could have gotten away with just improvising on it, and Jesse probably would have been thankful. But the fact that I spent all that time is to honor the song that Jesse wrote, and also because it's like, it's to Brendan's point. If you have a high quality musical performance into the song that's recorded well, into the session that's recorded at a good quality, it's so much easier to mix because it's just, there's already quality there and you just get to shape something. So if you're someone that layers and does your own stuff, I highly recommend that that's where you spend your time. And Mason experienced that as well. You know, he recorded something that's a placeholder, which is really common. You do scratch vocals, scratch guitar solos, scratch piano, but then go back and be like, okay, how do I want this to be? And really be a perfectionist on the mic placement, on the quality of the actual performance, and you'll be so much more thankful on the other side, because sometimes it's a drag to be like, this didn't turn out good. I have to go all the way back and strip all the effects that I did and start over. Does that make sense? Did anyone have experience kind of like that? To Brendan's point. Well, feel free to jump in if people have things. I have a couple things I'd like to talk about. Sam Paytosh, you did Drum K Milk, or whatever that is called.
Yeah.
Which is a really funky instrumentation. How did you, so we're talking brass quartet plus mandolin and cello. How did you approach the mixing? How did you approach that?
Right. Yeah, there was a lot there. Well, the first thing I did is I kind of did probably what about a bunch of us did, which was basically just listen to it over and over and over again and try and figure out like what is the big main thing that I want, or well, not really. What's the big main thing that like needs to be established in the sonic space? And so like first thing I thought of was like, well, this mandolin is really important. Then I was like, but this cello line is nice. And then I was like, I wonder if there's a way I could kind of play with that. And I'm trying to remember, what did I do? Let's pull up Reaper because I can't remember what I did. One of these, I know I took two of the instruments and I panned them. One of those set of instruments, I panned it to the left. The other instrument, I panned it to the right, and I kept one in the middle. I just can't remember which is which. I think, let's see. Yeah, so that's what I did. What I did is I actually kept the mandolin front and center, but I actually put the cello to the right and the brass to the left some. So to kind of open up that, and then I figured, well, what I was kind of thinking was that if I kind of shove the cello over there, it kind of makes you sort of lean almost right if you're like trying to listen to it, and I kind of liked that. Not necessarily like off-center feeling, but it's just kind of nice space that I took advantage of.
I like that. And to my ears, when I listen to it, it really brings out the uniqueness of the cello. Because for some reason, John Seiler, who wrote that really cool piece, brass quartet and mandolin fit well. It actually works really good. And
yeah.
Like, I had the same thought when I listened to it. The cello's kind of the weird one, not in a bad way. It's the enticing one. It's the one that you're like, whoa, that's a cool sound. It really holds it together. So by you putting that sound a little off center, it actually gives the cello more of a prominent place in the mix, even though it's not the main instrument.
And that's what I had noticed, and that's why pretty much I did it. I was like, because when I had it up in center, it was kind of like, well, this is nice, but it's not like, it feels like the presence wasn't there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does make sense. And then how did you approach the brass quartet? Did you do something specific to them? I think you had stereo mics, right? So you had two tracks to play with.
Was there? Hold up. It's dying momentarily. While I attempt to figure out what's happening. There might have been.
I'm almost positive.
You were hanging on by a thread.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. That's right. It's been just. Mel, don't mind me. This is.
Are you getting heckled during class?
I am getting heckled during class by Mallory, Allison, Lenny.
That's just rude. It's hard enough out here. We don't need people heckling you during class.
Working on a piece for him. Tell him I'm almost done.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, there is that
I'm
there is the double.
so sorry.
She's fine.
She's fine, he says.
I'll
Okay.
tell Mel I'll send her the YouTube link of that interruption. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, you had the brass stereo, right? Like a stereo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you address them with ambient generators with any kind of
Right.
reverb or chorus? Like, how did you give them that? Because you gave it like an ancient feel that I liked.
Yeah. What did I do? Let's find out. Let's first change the audio device so it will stop yelling at me. Okay, then I can look and see what I did. So what I did, actually, I did, oh, what is this? Okay, so what I did is first I threw an EQ before everything. I kind of like that sound more than the EQ after the reverb. So I threw in an EQ first, cut everything low. I pushed up around 200 hertz a little bit, and then around the 3000 hertz, I pushed up a little bit as well, and then the rest just sort of tapered down from there. And then what I did is I ran it through. I have a few other plugins on my Mac because like I do stuff in Logic and stuff.
Great.
So and because I have a Focusrite, I have the Red 3 compressor that comes with that. So I used that compressor actually instead of the built-in Reaper one.
Great.
And then there's a reverb. There's like a reverb ambience generator I have. It's called East-West Spaces. And that's what I actually used to do that. And what I did is, if I remember right on this one, let's pull up the plugin so I can see what I did. They have a bunch of ones. Anyways, one of them is they have they have a studio one, like if it was recorded in a studio. So in a way, because I figured, because like on my first playback, I was like, where do I imagine this sonically? I didn't really like imagine it like in a courthouse, or I didn't imagine it in a courtyard. Why am I saying so many court words? But I didn't like imagine it in those places. Where I felt it more was like in a, kind of sonically tighter, a bit more like a studio like. And so I went through the different studio presets and then found that one. I thought that one was the best. And what I had noticed is what they had done with it. And I don't know how the presets actually set up, but it felt like they kind of gave it a bit of that kind of old-timey vibe within the plugin itself. They must have cut some specific frequencies in the way that they set it up, because I never noticed that before adding that specific reverb controller.
That makes sense, yeah.
But other than that, that's basically what I did. The only other thing I did is I took the two brass tracks and I panned one to like 50, looks like about 40-50% to the left, took the other one and panned it to 80% to the left. But other than that, that's what I did.
Way pushed over.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, really, really nice work. So it really feels like kind of like the word of the day of this class is reverb, reverb, reverb. And just a very quick reverb history lesson. There's a reason why it's the most confounding thing to work with. It's because I would argue, and not vehemently, but out of all the plugins that are commonly used, it's the one that's the most difficult to replicate what it's trying to replicate. Meaning reverb in a space like Göransson or Jensen, it's just natural and it feels great. And there is a lot of time and science that goes into building rooms that have beautiful reverb. And if any of you have been to like a world-class concert hall in Salt Lake or Boise or LA or wherever, you know what I'm talking about. When you hear like a choir or a symphony in a world-class hall, you're like, okay, this is like really expertly done. And so reverb's trying to recreate that digitally. And like Ryan was talking about it often sounds bad. It just sounds really bad. And so two of the most common ways that you generated reverb back in the day, one of them was literally piping stereo outs, or just piping the sound of whatever you're trying to give reverb into a giant room with a microphone in it. So the famous one is Capitol Records. They have two reverb rooms that are just giant concrete rooms built underneath the studios with some really great speakers and a really beautiful microphone in the middle of the room. And so when they want to add reverb to John Coltrane's saxophone on Kind of Blue, they piped the saxophone track into this room with a microphone, picked up the reverb and brought it back. and then had this separate reverb track, just like Ryan was talking about. So it's not like you add reverb to your track like a plugin. You literally have a separate track, which is just the recording of that reverb, and you mix between the two. So, okay, so now you're playing with real reverb, so the plugins like that. And then the other way you used to do it is it's what's called plate reverb. So imagine I think it was brass, like you have a brass circle pinned in a way that it could reverberate, and you played the song similar to the room. You played the track to the plate, and the plate would hum with all the frequencies it was hearing and kind of like echo them, and you recorded the plate and then went that back and brought that back in. And so that was another, I mean, like we're talking like medieval cures for tuberculosis or something. It's like you have to bleed through the thigh and put leeches in. It's like the kind of things that these old school engineers did analog style in order to recreate reverb were really quite ingenious. And then once you get digital reverb, I mean, it's just, there's no great way to do it. So reverb is going to take you the rest of your life to perfect. And something like what Ryan is trying to do by having one single vocal track and try and create like a natural sound to it, it's incredibly difficult. And so, you know, as an engineer moving forward, you know, something that might work is be like, hey, Gabe, can you, I'm gonna render, this is just off the the seat of my pants. Like, let's say, as a for instance, Ryan rendered the master track, gave it to Gabe and said, hey, Gabe, can you find a reverberant place? Your church, Goranson Hall, stairwell. Put on your headphones and let's get a nice microphone. And I want you to sing your track over again in a stairwell or something. And then I'm going to mix those two together. That might not totally work, but stuff like that. Or when you record vocals sometimes, if you're the engineer, you can put a close mic on them in a large place. Like, let's say you're recording vocals in Goranson. Let's say you got to engineer the session, Ryan. So you have everything, all the farts and the whistles and the piano, and then you record the vocals, and you have one vocal close and you have one vocal about 10 feet off. And you say, when you want, because some of his vocal lines are like shouting, when you shout, really aim for that other mic, and the other mic's going to pick up more room sound. Stuff like this, like these kind of like creative ways of bringing a little bit of the analog vibe to your reverb sound are going to help a lot, because just grabbing a reverb plugin and playing with it takes a lot of work in order to get it right. And I think something that Jesse did that was so cool is by having different reverb plugins on different tracks. I almost wonder if you created this interesting thing that just like that was felt warm to the ear because there was so many different kinds of reverb that hit you. I don't know. It's a bit of a mystery, but the digital reverb thing, it's just hard. It's difficult to get to sound natural. Any other last thoughts before we end on the day, either on reverb or something else you learned from other folks' mixes or your own mix? Okay, so again, I'll send all of you some mixing notes. The mixing note might be, hey, sounded great. Or it might be something more specific. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to show you this mastering chain that I set up on Reaper, and I'll show you the two plugins that I'm using that you can actually get both of these plugins for under $100. They're both really good mastering plugins that I really enjoy. So in the future, you can master your own tracks, and we'll talk about that process on Tuesday and Thursday, and then we'll start gearing up towards our next round of projects. Okay, unless there's any other questions, if people want to stay on, I will see you guys all on Tuesday. Take care. Happy mixing. See you soon.